For those of us that were actively gaming during the 6th generation, the Dreamcast is our Derrick Rose of video game consoles. Tragically cut down in its prime, it will forever remain one of gaming's biggest what-ifs. Now, why the console failed is a topic that's been discussed every which way, and I think collectively there's a lot of different variables that went into it. But I think most of us can agree two of the most major causes of the Dreamcast's downfall is its lack of DVD playback and piracy. The Dreamcast was super easy to bootleg for. You didn't even need a mod chip or any special hardware. You could just burn games onto a CD, and the Dreamcast would read them without any additional resources required. Bootlegging on the Dreamcast was so out of control, there was even a bootleg version of the console itself. Somewhere between 2002 and 2003, a strange console by the name of the Treamcast started popping up in various markets around Hong Kong. The console looked exactly like the Dreamcast, only significantly smaller, and came with this fold-down display attached. Turns out this thing was essentially a Dreamcast. Despite being a knockoff console, it was made mostly with authentic Dreamcast parts, so I guess it doesn't really count as a bootleg console, more like an unauthorized modification. Yeah, we'll call it that. But the thing was actually pretty badass. The firmware that it came bundled with made it region free. It was literally capable of playing every Dreamcast game, no matter what part of the world you were in. It was also capable of reading a bunch of other different media types that the Dreamcast couldn't, including various video CD formats. Its bundled LCD screen was a modified version of the LCD screen that was available for the PS1. It also came bundled with these really neat Sega Saturn style controllers, and its smaller size made it a lot more portable and travel friendly than the authentic Dreamcast. Like, this wasn't just some slapped together bootleg console, some actual care went into designing this thing, and I've really been wanting one. These things have become pretty rare, and anyone that has one isn't looking to sell it, at least not for a reasonable price. I've gotten tired of searching and waiting, so I've decided to do the next best thing. I'm gonna make my own. Now, I'm not gonna be able to reduce the size of the overall console, but I'm gonna try my very best to accommodate some of the other bells and whistles that the Treamcast had available to it. Now, first things first, and probably most important, I needed to make this Dreamcast region free. Now, there's really no way for me to modify the Dreamcast firmware in order to accomplish this, at least none that I'm aware of. So I think the best bet here is just to ditch the disk drive altogether. On this Dreamcast, I installed a gdemu, and while setting up an SD card for it, you have the ability to make it completely region free. In my opinion, installing a gdemu is the most definitive mod you can do to your old Dreamcast console. No more stressing that poor GD-ROM drive, everything runs off of an SD card, and most games actually seem to run more smoothly. Not to mention the process is super simple. Just a few screws and everything else is plug and play. I'll put a link to a really good tutorial in the description in case any of you guys are considering installing a gdemu. Now that that's done, the next challenge is, what kind of screen am I going to attach to this thing? I tried out a bunch of different displays from a variety of different sizes. I even toyed around with the idea of having a small screen pop up from where the disk drive used to be. The option I eventually went with is this 8-inch 4x3 LCD display that I found on AliExpress. It looked to be a decent size, and it was cheap enough to the point where it was probably going to cost me more to 3D print the housing that I had in mind for my own display that I was planning on attaching, so it just seemed to be a better choice. Now, the real question was, what kind of quality is this thing going to be? It took about 4 weeks to get here despite paying for expedited shipping, and this box is in pretty rough shape. And it smells like it was packaged at a fish market. But opening it up, all of the parts were there and nothing seems to be broken. There is some assembly required, but it's not too difficult, and I was able to get it done in about 5 minutes. Now, I was disappointed to see that it actually doesn't attach itself to the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast just kind of rests underneath it. I was able to remedy this right away with a couple of pieces of Velcro, but in the future, I am going to design a little clamping system so that these two stay one solid piece. But the screen works, it's of decent quality for the price, and it gets the job done. And lastly, I wanted a controller with the aesthetic of the Sega Saturn, just like the gamepads that came bundled with the Dreamcast. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any Sega Saturn style controller that people spoke fondly of. Every controller I kept finding, people had nothing but terrible things to say about it. And I didn't want to spend any money on something that's gonna break or just not function properly. So I decided to go in a different direction and bought a Striker DC wireless gamepad. This thing's design more closely resembles an Xbox controller than it does a Sega Saturn, But nonetheless, it has 8 active inputs total, 4 face buttons and 4 shoulder buttons, a turbo feature, and a Hall effect joystick, which is actually a big bonus. And unlike the Treamcast controller, this thing is actually compatible with VMU. Its included dongle actually has a dock for your VMU, and it even has built-in rumble. So overall, I think it's just a huge upgrade. The end result is a more portable Dreamcast that's capable of playing all of my favorite games directly from an SD card no matter what region they're from. So I would say my attempt to make a bootleg of a bootleg console was actually a success. It might not be an apples to apples comparison with the Dreamcast, but I'm overall happy with the way it came out. I said it once and I'll say it again, anytime I get a chance to dust off my Dreamcast, it's a good day for me. And after all these years, this console is still great. And in the short list of what if consoles, the Dreamcast is pretty high up there. What are some of your guys' favorite what if consoles? Consoles that have had the opportunity to shine, would have been much greater than what they were. Let me know in the comment section. Also, if any of you guys are interested in any of the stuff that I used in order to make this bootleg of a bootleg build, I'll put links in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.